And let's kick off. Okay, so lovely to meet you all, and thanks for coming this evening, giving your time to listen to a few top tips on movie marketing. Obviously, we've had a really interesting 2020, and lots of things have changed. But a lot of the way that we do things, I think how we react to these situations, um, some elements of it can remain the same in terms of marketing. And obviously we are a technology and also a data company, and we very much believe that data can help everybody achieve greater things with their marketing. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are kind of generic across the changing times and actually becoming more important with some of the old models of movie marketing and the old models of movie distribution really having been disrupted in 2020 and continuing to be so for the first half of the year, despite a lot of optimism that we would have had that things were, gonna flip. A switch was going to flip in 2021 at the beginning, but we definitely have a bit more of a wait, and we need to get smarter about how we do things. So the main things I'm going to talk about today is really one of the big important things about owning your own data, really testing campaigns, trying to do new things in order to improve the way you're marketing, and also just thinking about the full life cycle of any movie that you're bringing out, not just thinking about it in siloed elements and in the old way where we really looked at it as the life cycle went from production into theatrical distribution, into streaming or VOD, different types of VOD distribution, and then potentially some kind of ancillary revenues after that. We really need to look at that all from the beginning so that you can really maximize how well a film can do across that life cycle. So I think my main thing I would stress is that no matter what part of film promotion or film distribution you work in, and even in some areas where you may not think of yourself as a film marketeer, we're all film marketeers in all those interactions that we have with any consumer of our film content, and that data is really a friend within this environment. I worked before usheru, I worked for 7 years at Google, and very much then came into founding this company with my two business partners. And having come from an environment where e-commerce was very advanced, not because of Google, but because of maybe like a lot of the retail or travel sector companies that I worked with, coming in then in essentially early 2015 into the film industry. There wasn't really the same ethos about looking at customers and being really focused on the customer's journey in the film industry that you would see at that stage already in 2015 in other industries. Now, in saying that, since 2015 to now, 2021, data is playing a much bigger role, and is becoming very central, and is becoming obviously even more critical in the past year, where everyone wants to really know who their customer is. A lot of really large studios are making very dramatic strategic changes to go direct to consumer. And that's really what, essentially what I'd like to stress today is going direct to consumer gives you control, gives you some way to build loyalty towards not just your film title, but potentially to your brand, depending on your positioning, and also gives you a way to reduce costs and have a better return on investment for any marketing euro, dollar, or pound that you might spend investing in acquiring new consumers to go see your film. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on usheru. Now, some of these are actually quite old films. It's a bit of an old slide, but we have in usheru contributed to some really big titles, and really been working over the past 6 years to get the distributors, producers, and the national film bodies we work with to really think about the audience. And obviously it is very much led with product and led with the title, but we were working with working with distributors, for example, who had like, they were in the third, sequel of a franchise like Despicable Me 3, and they'd already had two previous editions of that film, but they didn't have any really good direct data on the audience from Despicable Me, Despicable Me and Despicable Me 2, and then you're in your third cycle of this, and essentially you're targeting the same audience. You should be able to go back to that same pool of customers, access them more cheaply and more directly. And then every time you should really be just be building on the popularity of that franchise. Now, this is true not just for, large blockbuster releases, but also for independent films, because independent films tend to attract similar cohorts of audiences. And it's really understanding who that audience is, having access to them is what's most important to kind of secure your future success, and to have some a loyal go-to group that you can count on in terms of marketing. And then you're really just building on that over time. And the way, like as I mentioned, was we really like to think about that full film life cycle. So not just thinking about, okay, I want to get my film distributed in theaters or in cinema now, and I want to get as many as possible, and not really taking ownership over actually consumers finding it. We really tried to think about, like, when you actually have that film in production, you can start to build awareness and demand. You can involve talent. You can you can feature shooting of, you can have competitions, quizzes, prizes, and start building a repository of consumers who are already interested in your film. And over time, you build that awareness and that demand. So by the time you're actually getting into the cinema, you're not just launching your advertising campaigns to a cold group, be that 2 weeks before, 4 weeks before, 6 weeks before, depending on your budget, obviously. But really, you've got maybe trailer drops happening of some kind. You might have some award accolades you can be talking about, but you've really got to try to tie this all together. And I think the big thing that we're doing at usheru is like tying that together digitally. So you have a home for that film, or for your films, where you can send those audiences. And then there's an engine behind it, which is very data driven, which is telling you who those are. Now, obviously, we've got this, things have become very disruptive in the last year, where we did look at this in production, then in theatrical, and then moving into VOD, whether that's transactional VOD, premium VOD, or subscription VOD. There's a lot of options there at the moment, but essentially it's still, and it is increasingly more important. We know consumers are consuming much more content from a streaming platform than they would have previously. A lot have multiple subscriptions as well. But I think the thing that we need to bear in mind is, films may be in these platforms, they still need to be discovered. And you actually going to the audience and giving them a way to discover within a platform such as we offer in usheru, to discover where that is on across these different platforms, is really important. I think we all know, you could be logged into your Netflix account, but it's quite difficult to navigate sometimes if you don't know the film title, or the genres aren't always great. So, you've got to maybe take ownership of either your film title, that branding, and let consumers discover where it's on across lots of different platforms, across lots of different cinemas. Or you take control of your brand and really try to build a brand. And a really nice example of this is like a player like A24, who've really built an ethos around the A24 brand. And then the films that come underneath that are a part of the whole ethos of the type of content that they fund, produce, distribute, the merchandise that comes along with that. And they're really trying to build a whole real loyal customer base. And they're doing that with a lot of data in the background to really understand who is that audience. So when you're going back again, it doesn't cost you much every time. So yeah, I'm just going to jump out of really talking about that, I guess, in terms of the usheru product, and just kind of focus on some golden rules, that top tips I would have for film marketeers. A lot of these kind of tips have stood the test of time. When I was in my previous life working at Google, working with a lot of web developers, e-commerce players, publishers, web publishers generally, A lot of the things that were true then about building quality content, maintaining fresh content, all these things remain really true. And they have stood the test of time. And shortcuts, I would say my main advice would be shortcuts don't work. Acquiring a lot of content, acquiring a lot of users maybe to either a film website or your own company page. You can spend money on marketing and you can get some short-term users and maybe but superficial viewers. So what you really need to think about is getting good quality users, visiting traffic, who become consumers, who become more likely to actually consume your film content. So I'm going to work through some ideas and some rules that we like to follow around this. So number one, I think I mentioned at the beginning, is it's really important to own your audience. I think one of the bigger mistakes that is made is using external platforms, particularly social media platforms, to build audiences there. But then essentially you will build them there, but then you'll be charged to communicate with them. You can build those audiences, but you should be trying to bring them home to your own website or your own platform, converting them, getting them signing up directly to you with email address so you can communicate them virtually for free. And whereas a lot of people build platforms and followers and users on lots of different platforms, but essentially those users live in that platform. They don't live in your brand or in your portal. And I think an amazing example of this is from this week, which I won't actually draw parallels between Donald Trump and the film industry, but really the point that became really obvious was, like, Donald Trump was on Twitter and he'd 88 million followers. Now he's been suspended from Twitter, and the access to all of those followers has gone with that suspension. So it is just an illustrative example of there's a huge, there's a huge amount, a huge followership, but that has disappeared in the blink of an eye. And I think that just illustrates that building on another platform is not your own. And I think it just stresses the point that even in the case of, and it isn't any kind of marketing, is like going direct to those consumers, trying to build a repository of email addresses and making them loyal fans, maybe within a community, if you have the ability to build that, no matter how small, is probably better quality than getting, maybe superficial likes on certain platforms. They don't do harm, but sometimes you have to view them, some things, as vanity metrics, because what leads from, a fan or a like or a follow to an action that is the desirable action that you have, that it goes beyond a vanity metric, where ultimately you want somebody to take an interest in your film, watch your trailer, read about your cast, search for a ticket for the cinema, maybe watch it on a streaming platform. And I think you've really got to think about where you're spending your marketing money. Is it giving you vanity metrics, or is it actually bringing traffic to a place where people can actually take those actions? And I think it's really important to think about, even if you can exploit the benefits of any of these other channels like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but then try to always lead that back to something that you own, where you can actually cultivate that audience and, run a competition, ask them to sign up for your newsletter, and actually build that yourself in your own CRM system, so that you have the right to contact them, obviously, in a way that is in line with, obviously, GDPR regulations or CCPA regulations if you're in the United States, for example. So yeah, own your audience, number one rule. And I think you can have this is just an example, I guess, of a way to do some of that kind of targeting. This is like an example of a trailer for an Irish film, actually, Black 47, on YouTube. And it's really, here you've got, like, you're running essentially an ad here when someone's actually watching that trailer on YouTube, to bring them back to that Black 47 website, where they can actually, like, express that intent. Now, even better than that is hosting. If you can, like, get these trailer views, is hosting that trailer on your website, so you can then measure how much of the trailer are they watching, how much more can I engage, can I lead them from a trailer watch through my website towards searching for tickets, towards some other type of engagement on the website that actually would attract them, a competition, for example. So even better than, like, targeting them on YouTube with an ad to bring them back to your website. And look, a lot of trailer drops happen on YouTube. Look, we know that, but we would definitely have the ethos of, like, host that trailer drop, especially if you're going to generate a lot of views, host it on your own website so you can actually see who are those people coming to watch that. Are they watching 25%, 50%, 75% of that trailer? And then does that cohort come back again? Have they visited again? Have they reacted to another ad? You want to be able to measure all these different behaviors and actually see what works. And then obviously I'm saying own your audience and, target your audience, understand these cohorts. But then I think the really big thing is data has become something that's considered extremely valuable, but there is a gazillion cases of situations where people have built up enormous databases, but they're not doing anything with it, or not doing anything of value with it. So I think the main key point here is data that's sitting dormant is actually not valuable data. And there is a general, almost like a throwaway phrase that you hear about data is king, data is valuable, all this. But I think the point is, if you're not doing something with it, there's nothing valuable about it. And it's really important that you really try to segment it, to look at who are those people, where are they located, what are their age groups, and try to discover what you can offer them. If you don't know what you can offer them, I really recommend, like, if you have that access to a selection of customers, ask a few of them to have a discussion. Ask them for like a 10-minute, 15-minute video chat, ask them a series of questions. If you're really trying to understand your audience, you want to do it with data, and you also want to have some qualitative factors that you won't get from family and friends about, how well you're doing things, but a stranger reach out to might give you that honest feedback that you're looking for. And it, really focusing on what consumers want will only improve how you do business, and how you can really market your film well. This is key as well, and I mentioned at the start, is to start marketing early. Really frequently in working with distributors on releases is, there's a media, and this is obviously a big part of this, obviously, is cultivated from the fact of, like, limited budgets. But you do see this happen so often, where media campaigns are really just kicked off 7 to 10 days sometimes before film release is happening. And what I would recommend is, like, just start earlier with, I guess, what we used to call, like, guerrilla marketing tactics. So those elements of, like, how can you create interest online for free, try to build, a user base that you could retarget, test campaigns early. Because the worst thing you can do is maybe work with a media agency, and maybe your budget is, 100 grand, maybe your budget's 10 grand. But the worst thing you can do is work in a media agency. They send you a media plan, you have a little look, and you're like, okay, cool, we'll do that. And we're going to put 20% in this, 50% in this, 10% in this, boom, boom, boom. I've seen these media plans. This is, largely, things get pre-decided. What you should be doing is starting early, running test campaigns, seeing, okay, I've got 3 campaigns there. Out of the 3, 1 is performing really well. Let's make that a part of the media plan. Let's scrap the other 2. Then run another collection of campaigns, different types of creatives. Try video, try gift, try posters, and really try to figure out, well, what's actually working. Because if you just launch these campaigns, you're not even testing them, because what you're going to end up doing is just setting them up, letting them run, spending all your money, and then you're not ultimately even linking that back to, what you're hopefully looking for, which is ticket sales and watches, and generally generating buzz and interest around your film. So start marketing early, and I caveat that by saying start testing your marketing campaigns early. And then the other thing I would say is, within your marketing campaigns, try as much to direct all that traffic back to your website. As I mentioned earlier, you could have decided to your trailer drop on YouTube, and then, you might be sending people there to watch that trailer, but you can't garner any, like, really insightful information into that group that you could overlay on other sources of data that you have sitting in your own website. So try to direct all your campaigns home. So always the thesis of bring it home, bring it back to your film title, your website, your brand, and make sure that you're able to then cultivate any interest or any consumers within your own domain and doing it the way that you want to, and then also of course trying different things. And I think, look, I mean, these are kind of like what you call we say your marketing hacks. I think really understanding that being found organically and having good search engine optimization is never easy. Like, and there is no quick fix to this. So, it is quite technical in ways, but having, really good fresh content always improves your SEO. Having a good reputation always improves your SEO. You know, and just, I guess, a home page or your website that like is constantly been updated with fresh content, putting up your website early. I will talk a little bit about, but there has been a trend previously to, just commissioning a website for a film, putting it up, might be up for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, taking it down. Very much the ethos we have at usheru is, create a platform which has all your films. And when you have a release, skin that platform, brand it for the release. But, don't start from zero in terms of trying to build your organic traffic and being indexed by Google bots for the first time when you just put your website up. You want to have that reputation and history, which actually is one of the biggest things that can contribute to a good search result for the search term that someone is looking for. So yeah, really changing your ethos and not just jumping from release to release is important, because I think digitally having an engine essentially, and I'll maybe just talk a little bit about at the end about, say, a product we have called Home for Film, which is basically like a showcase of all your films that is always on. And then when you have a release, you skin your platform for that release, but you're having this long-term traffic being measured over a long period of time. You're building reputation, you're having fresh content, and essentially you really start to see the fruits of that labor after a couple of years. And as I said, I think from as early as you can, when you have like a film that has been funded, is in production, and is, everything's moving in the right direction, start taking content out of what you're creating. As in, you can use the talent to help you promote this. You can take snippets of the making of things like this, like just to have fresh content, but also have things that consumers are really interested in engaging with. Put those things into that home, or that website that where you're having your kind of central place to send people, and really keep it fresh, keep it interesting, and don't just let it sit and expect it to work magic without some love and attention from you or from somebody in your team. I think it's really important to have that ethos, and as I said, put this content, don't put it out only into the world of social and not try to bring it back into your realm. So you can use all these social channels to generate this interest, but always try to have a destination URL that is tagged, that you're sending people back to, so you really start to understand which of these platforms is working for you well, and when they come back, are you able to convert them into something interesting? And a conversion could be that you get their email address. A conversion could be that they play a game that you've created on your website. It could be that they search for a ticket. It could be that they search for where this is viewable on a streaming platform. It could be that they register to be notified when this film is released. And those are the type of conversions. And that's like very much the e-commerce idea behind it, is like, what does a conversion mean at different stages of the life cycle of a film? Because in the early stages, it can mean something very different. A conversion when it's in theaters ultimately is a ticket purchase, But a conversion at a different point in time could be like, please tell me when this film is coming out. And that could be, you know, when you're really only in the production phase and people don't think too much about marketing in that really early phase. They kind of really only activate those things when they're, you know, moving out and into the distribution phase. And look, this is, as I've said, you can build these audience profiles of engaged fans. People are, and generationally, you know, they say that the generation Y, I'm thinking after the millennial generation is you know, is extremely loyal, more constant in terms of in what they engage with, and also in terms of brand engagement. And I think, you know, we consistently urge producers, film distributors, and national film bodies as well to think of themselves as a brand in people's minds. The film title that's released is a brand, of course, but it's sitting under that umbrella. And typically, like any company, you build a reputation for the way you work, the type of content that you bring out, and you have the ability to build engaged fans, loyal fans. And I think, you know, you should ultimately build them within your own realm and use the tools of different social media platforms, different advertising platforms to make that happen for yourself. So use the tools that are there, but then ultimately bring them back to your own place and make that your audience and own it. And this is, look, I'm just repeating what I mentioned earlier, is don't just set that media marketing campaign that's given to you, tweak it a little bit, you know, try to do things much earlier, test what works, even if that means spending, like, you know, really small amounts, 50 to 100 euro, to test the best of 3 campaigns to get the number one. Because what you should be doing then is putting more budget into the number one campaign, and just like being quite black and white about just throwing out the other campaigns that may look good, may look like they're going to do good things, but ultimately if they just don't land with consumers online, then it's really not worth investing your online marketing budget in them. So test marketing messages and engagement, and test many things. As I said, test ad format that you're using, test the messaging that you're using, test the people that you're targeting. And ultimately then you'll have a much better idea when you actually are activating your budget, what will actually get you the best return on investment for what the money that you have to spend, as I said, be that large or be that small. And then I think a really important one is to, within whatever data analytical tool that you have available to you, is really looking at retargeting. So what is the journey that consumer is making in your website, and can you engage with that data in a way that lets you measure their intent? So here's an example here, you know, if we're trying to retarget someone towards a purchase, where we can actually measure, like someone comes in, engages on this website, we can see that they imagine they click in here, they book the tickets, they select 2 seats, and then they're gone. And it's like, okay, why do they abandon their cart? And this is really where I'm talking about, like, you've got to think about it more like an e-commerce journey, because all these digital interactions have similarities in terms of how consumers engage with them. So essentially they abandon their cart. If I did that on a shopping website, I'm pretty sure I would be retargeted with an ad to bring me back. Or, you know, if I already had a login, they would send me an email telling me, oh, you know, Catherine, you were looking at this item, you forgot to purchase it. You can do all those same things within this industry and this category, and try to look at maximizing effectiveness by retargeting people who go through different steps in that purchase funnel but maybe don't complete that purchase. And then, you know, essentially you're moving a collection of people who probably had a big intent to go and buy that ticket, to move them back into that realm of thinking, and then, you know, hopefully actually finalize that purchase and lead to a successful box office ultimately, and also, you know, will lead to more awareness ultimately. And this is, I guess, an element which I can't stress enough, because tagging campaigns is just so important, because everything everything I've really talked about here, unless you're tagging things and seeing what's coming into your analytical platform that you're using to measure these campaigns or to measure visits into your website, is, can be useless without really understanding exactly what you did. Like I said, test many campaigns, test with different ad formats, video versus poster, for example. So you really want to be like called as a campaign type. You want to know the poster works better than the video. And you can, if you've generic data about effectiveness of campaigns, you won't be able to make those really smart decisions about, where you want to direct your marketing budget and the campaigns that you want to shut down. So understanding how to tag campaigns is so important. And actually, we might do a more tactical session. Maybe we're doing a series of webinars this winter. We might do a session that's a bit more tactical around like how to do X, how to do Y, including things like tagging campaigns, if it's something that we think there's some demand to understand. So yeah, really important, especially if you're doing things yourself. Obviously, any agency you might be working with will will have the tools and the understanding to do this, but especially if you're doing this for yourself, it's really important that you are tagging across different platforms, and that you're actually able to like delineate success from wasted marketing expenditure. And then just gonna, I guess, look, this is really key. I mean, how do you do this in practice? We know that, a recommendation from a friend is 80% more effective than any other type of recommendation or any other type of promotion or advertisement, in order to get people's attentions, and humans move in flocks, and it's actually also a shortcut to a decision is a recommendation from a friend. So any way that you can actually like I don't know, incentivize or give people a nudge to promote satisfaction with your film, or they took part in your competition. You can do digital ways where you can kind of like create a network effect and get people to share, but also just someone talking to friends. And I think the best way to do it is really, that's having good content, that's having an enjoyable experience in terms of digital interactions also with anything that you put out. And obviously, ultimately, in the industry that we're in, it's the film and people going and saying like, that was a great watch, is what's, really going to work well. But, any way you can promote those interactions, human to human, is worth its weight in gold. And then one of the final things I'd say would be, which I mentioned earlier, it kind of ties in with the idea that, a lot of companies and a lot of different players in this industry, for example, can build large data sets, and as I said, understand audiences, and where they have those large data sets and they don't use them is not actually valuable. So, having actively using your data is really important. And also, I think the other thing is considering sharing your data or cross promoting can be effective. Now, obviously, sharing data in some senses can be problematic from a data privacy perspective, but cross promoting or co-marketing is definitely something that can be really low cost, because essentially what you're setting up is if you tell your audience about what I'm doing or my product or this competition or whatever, I will also promote what you're doing to mine. So, it can be a reciprocal relationship, and I think it gives you a way to access a big audience. So if you have industry partners that, have a similar audience or an audience you would like to target, co-marketing partnerships is a really good way, and especially if they're reciprocal, is a really good way to access new audiences, and access relevant audiences at a really low cost. And I think that's definitely something that, put some thinking time on and figure out if there's ways to do that too. So yeah, and I think the final one is setting goals that you can measure. So one of the pitfalls people fall into is really setting setting up a lot of ideas around campaigns that they're going to do, but then not really looking back, reflecting on it. And sometimes when there is good reflection, it's a bit too late to react. So I think it's about setting meaningful goals about what you're trying to achieve, figuring out how you're going to measure that. So when you set the goal, just say, is that measurable? What could be the measure of success for that? And then also keeping an eye on that. And like, I think when you're like coming up to really to a release of a film, you got to be looking at, those goals daily. If, these are more long-term goals that you're working towards incrementally, you've got to be looking at them weekly. And I think ultimately the main thing is like, they have to be goals that you can measure. And they, these are just like kind of, I guess, tenets of the way to work that come from business. It's make those goals measurable. And that's how you really know if you're achieving what you set out to do. And really then, behind that all, and this is an example of some usheru analytics, is, measuring, your top campaigns, your top channels, is there an audience you can retarget, and really keeping on top of that, understanding, across devices. We've seen now, I mean, I say we've seen this like trend quickly over the last, well, I mean, I'd say it's in place 4 years. 80% of, these 80% of traffic on a lot of the web platforms we work on are coming from mobile. So, it's not an afterthought. Should be absolutely central to how targeting happens, how ads are created, how data is rendered. It is so important. And it's easy just to think about desktop because typically when you're in your day-to-day, that's what you're looking at from a work perspective. But mobile is incredibly important, and it's not diminishing in importance. So really making sure every format that you release is mobile optimized and responsive is really key to success, and key to giving consumers what they need and giving them the type of interactions that they expect, because there's a lot of different apps, websites that consumers are interacting with, and so the level and the expectation is extremely high. So when they have a suboptimal experience, bounce rates off websites, and it doesn't matter how engaging the content may be, if a consumer can't read it easily, can't navigate it easily on mobile, or elements are suboptimal generally for their recognition, then you're already on the back foot. And I think that's really important to understand. So yeah, so I'm wondering if anyone has any questions. Okay, that's great. So someone will be interested in some more webinars on the tactical elements about how to set up and how to run these campaigns, how to do tagging, and how to get the best out of different platforms. That could be something that we do starting next month if you're interested in joining. In the meantime, I would love anybody who wants to contact me. My email address is cdowns@usheru.com. And then particularly if anyone's interested in learning more about usheru and the long-term digital platform that we're giving to film distributors, producers, and to national film bodies, feel free obviously to contact me, but also John in my team is the demo king. So feel free also just to email John if you want a 15-minute demo of the product. His email address is jburn@usheru.com. So thank you very much everyone for joining. I hope you have a lovely evening, and we'll have another webinar. It will be advertised on our website around this time next month. And we will build content going into more practical details, tactical details about like how to set up campaigns and what to do to really get going. And if you're already at a very sophisticated level, anyone on our team would love to talk directly about maximizing your data, your loyalty, your audience, and really going direct to consumer in a big way, because it's very obvious that that's the way to go now, to own data and own your own destiny. So thank you very much everybody. Thanks for joining, and hope to cross paths again soon. Okay, take care.